Hernando de Soto was a Spanish explorer and conquistador who led expeditions in Nicaragua and the Yucatan Peninsula. He is best known for leading the first European expedition deep into modern-day United States territory, including Florida, Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Mississippi. He is the first European recorded to have crossed the Mississippi River in 1540. De Soto's mission was an enormous endeavor. The conquistador traveled throughout what is now the southeastern United States in search of gold, which had been reported by numerous Native American tribes and earlier coastal explorers, as well as a way to China or the Pacific coast. Hernando de Soto's arrival in the Tampa Bay area marked the beginning of one of the most ambitious and harrowing explorations of what is now the southeastern United States. This region, known for its lush, untamed landscapes and diverse indigenous cultures, served as the starting point for de Soto's arduous expedition in search of wealth and glory. De Soto and his fleet of 9 ships, over 600 men, 220 horses, and an assortment of supplies, made landfall on the western coast of Florida, near modern-day Tampa Bay. This was a strategic choice due to its navigable waters and reports of rich inland territories. The bay, lined with mangroves and dotted with small islands, appeared both inviting and mysterious. The shimmering waters teemed with fish, while the dense forests echoed with the calls of strange birds. Upon landing, de Soto's men constructed a base camp, unloading their horses and supplies to prepare for their inland journey. The humid air and thick vegetation presented immediate challenges to the Spanish, who were unaccustomed to the subtropical climate and the swarms of mosquitoes that descended upon them. The Tampa Bay area was home to various indigenous peoples, including the Calusa to the south and the Tocobaga in the immediate region. These tribes, known for their mound-building cultures and maritime skills, were initially cautious but not welcoming. The Tocobaga, who lived in small villages of thatched roof homes along the coast, displayed a strong connection to the natural world. Their diet relied on fishing, hunting, and cultivating crops like maize, beans, and squash. The Spanish marveled at the efficiency of their fishing techniques, which utilized weirs and nets in the shallow waters of the bay. However, de Soto was not interested in their way of life. He sought riches, particularly gold, which the Tocobaga did not possess. Hostilities quickly arose as de Soto's demands for food and labor escalated. The Tocobaga resisted, leading to violent skirmishes. De Soto's forces, equipped with steel weapons, crossbows, and firearms, had the upper hand militarily, but the Tocobaga used their intimate knowledge of the land to evade capture and strike back when opportunities arose. The Tampa region's natural beauty was unlike anything the Spanish had seen before. Towering pine forests, oak hammocks, and vast swamplands stretched across the horizon, creating a verdant tapestry. The Spanish noted the abundance of wildlife, including deer, wild turkeys, alligators, and countless birds, some with plumage so vibrant they seemed otherworldly. Rivers and estuaries were alive with fish, crabs, and oysters, which the Tocobaga harvested skillfully. The land appeared fertile, with wild fruits like plums, persimmons, and berries growing in abundance. De Soto recognized the agricultural potential of the region, though his primary focus remained on extracting wealth from the local populations. One of the most dramatic moments of de Soto's time in Tampa Bay was the rescue of Juan Ortiz, a Spaniard who had been stranded in the region for over a decade. Ortiz had arrived with an earlier expedition led by Panfilo de Narvaez in 1528 and had been captured by the Calusa. He survived by becoming an intermediary for local tribes. When de Soto learned of his existence, he sought to bring Ortiz into his fold. Ortiz proved invaluable to de Soto's mission. Fluent in several indigenous languages, he served as a translator and guide, bridging the communication gap between the Spanish and the local tribes. However, Ortiz's warnings about the dangers of the interior, the fierce resistance of the tribes, and the lack of gold were largely ignored by de Soto, whose ambition drove him forward. After several weeks in Tampa Bay, de Soto decided to press inland. His forces dismantled their temporary camp and began their march north and east. They relied heavily on horses, enslaved indigenous guides, and the supplies they had brought from Cuba. Along the way, de Soto and his men looted indigenous villages, taking what they needed, food, captives, and information, by force. The terrain quickly became challenging. Marshes and swamps slowed their progress, and the dense forests were difficult to navigate. The humid climate took a toll on both men and animals, leading to disease and exhaustion. Despite these challenges, De Soto pushed on, driven by rumors of a great chiefdom in the interior that held untold riches. De Soto's time in the Tampa area set the tone for the rest of his expedition, a brutal clash of cultures marked by violence, resistance, and survival. His landing in Tampa Bay introduced European influence to the region, but it also devastated the local populations. The diseases brought by the Spanish, combined with the violence of their campaign, would decimate indigenous communities in the years that followed. The Tampa Bay area, rich in natural resources and cultural history, became a gateway for Spanish exploration in North America. For De Soto, however, it was merely the beginning of a long and arduous journey that would ultimately end in his death near the Mississippi River in 1542. His time in Tampa stands as a testament to both the ambition and the destructiveness of European exploration during the Age of Conquest. The following narrative blends historical details with descriptions that capture the spirit of Hernando de Soto's expedition, using the perspective he might have employed in writing a journal. Here is the story from the journal of Hernando de Soto in his own words. The story of this land begins long before my own journey, with the great Juan Ponce de Leon, who first set his gaze upon this paradise in the year of our Lord 1513. He sailed from the Indies in search of new lands for Spain, driven by the promise of wealth and the tales of a miraculous spring, the fountain of youth, said to restore vigor and life to those who drink of its waters. He came ashore in a place he named La Florida, near present-day Miami Beach, for he discovered it during the season of Pascua, Florida, the Feast of Flowers, when the land was abloom in colors that rivaled the heavens themselves. The shores were like none other in the New World, with soft sands that gleamed like gold under the sun. Towering palms lined the coast, and inland lay forests so green and vibrant that they seemed to pulse with life. The rivers ran clear, their waters abundant with fish, and the air was sweet with the fragrance of blossoms. Such beauty must have seemed a divine blessing, and so he claimed it for Spain, giving it a name to honor both its natural splendor and the Easter season. Yet Ponce de Leon's journey, like all our ventures, was not without peril. The natives he encountered, though curious, were wary of his intentions. They spoke of distant riches and lands filled with wonders, but their words were veiled with mistrust. Their women, too, were striking in their appearance, strong yet graceful, adorned with necklaces of shells and beads, their long black hair falling like rivers over their bronzed shoulders. Following his path, we set sail from Havana in May 1539, with a fleet worthy of the task ahead. Our ships carried not just men, but horses, weapons, and the tools to tame this new land. The sea was merciful, carrying us swiftly toward the northern coast. The sight of land filled our hearts with joy, for it marked the beginning of a new chapter in Spain's glory. We anchored near the shore, the waves breaking gently against the hulls of our ships. As we stepped ashore, the land greeted us with its intoxicating scent, a mix of salt and wildflowers. Pines and oaks stretched into the sky, their trunks wide enough to house a man. The ground beneath our feet was rich and dark, promising bounty. Birds filled the air with their songs, and strange creatures moved through the underbrush, their forms unknown to us. The women of this land were unlike any I had seen before. Although savages, their beauty was a reflection of the land itself, wild and unspoiled, yet strong and enduring. One in particular, the Lady of Kofitachequi, stands in my memory as a vision of majesty. When we arrived in her domain, she greeted us with the dignity of a queen, carried on a litter by her people. Her hair was as black as the night sky, falling in long, straight locks that framed her face like a veil. Her eyes, dark and sharp, held a wisdom beyond her years, and her skin was the color of polished bronze, glowing in the sunlight. She wore a mantle adorned with pearls, each one a treasure that spoke of the wealth of her people. Around her neck hung necklaces of shell and stone, finely crafted with the care of a people who understood beauty. Though she ruled with strength, there was a softness in her movements, a grace that made her seem almost ethereal. Yet, beneath that elegance, I sensed a determination as firm as the stones beneath our feet. This land is a paradise of untapped riches. The forests are alive with creatures of every kind, deer that leap with unearthly grace, bears that lumber through the woods, and great reptiles that dwell in the swamps, their eyes glowing like embers in the night. The rivers teem with fish, from the sleek gar to the monstrous sturgeon, their scales shining like armor. The soil is rich, yielding crops of maize, beans, and squash that could sustain entire armies. The trees bear fruits both familiar and strange, plums, figs, and persimmons that burst with flavor. Flowers of every color bloom across the fields, their petals as soft as silk. Yet it is not gold that this land offers in abundance, but pearls. In the lands of the Lady of Kofitachequi, we found strings of them, their luster unmatched by any jewel in the old world. These treasures, though not the gold we sought, are a testament to the wealth that lies hidden in this vast wilderness. This land, though beautiful, is unforgiving. Its people are proud and fierce, unwilling to yield to our divine mission. Yet I see in them a potential for greatness, if only they would accept the true faith and the rule of Spain. The women, like the Lady of Kofitachequi, possess a strength and beauty that mirrors the land itself, unyielding, vibrant, and untamed. The air was thick with tension as we approached the fortified village of Mabila, modern-day Mobile, Alabama, a settlement promised to us by Chief Tuscaloosa as a place of refuge and trade. It was anything but. Tuscaloosa, a savage of towering stature and unyielding pride, led us into this trap with the cunning of a fox. His warriors were ready, hidden behind the primitive wooden palisades of the town, a structure hastily constructed yet formidable in its simplicity. The gates of Mabila opened to us under the guise of hospitality. The villagers greeted us with calm faces, presenting us with offerings of food, maize bread, smoked venison, and roasted fish, and gestured for us to settle within the village. But my soldiers were not blind to the underlying unease in the air. The women of the village whispered nervously, their eyes darting to their warriors, who gripped their clubs and spears with barely restrained anticipation. Tuscaloosa, clad in ceremonial garb of feathers and animal skins, sat regally among his people. He exuded the confidence of a leader who had planned every move. Though he had initially traveled with us under duress, his composure now suggested a man who knew the tides were about to turn in his favor. As my men began to relax and unload their gear, the gates of Mabila slammed shut with an echoing boom. From every direction, native warriors poured forth, their war cries reverberating like thunder through the air. These were no ordinary combatants. They were warriors of a disciplined and unified force, their bodies painted in vivid reds and blacks, their faces fierce with resolve. They wielded spears, clubs, and bows, weapons they handled with deadly precision. The Spanish were immediately thrown into chaos by the savages. The palisades of the village acted as a natural barrier, hemming us into a confined killing ground. Smoke began to rise as the natives set the buildings aflame, transforming the village into an inferno of fire and ash. The flames licked at the sky, consuming the thatched roofs of the homes, filling the air with acrid smoke that burned our lungs and obscured our vision. I barked orders for the men to form a defensive line, raising their shields and drawing their swords. Those with muskets fired volleys into the advancing crowd, the sound of gunfire like a hammer striking an anvil, but our numbers were too few, and our powder supply limited. The native warriors came in waves, undeterred by their losses. Every time one fell, another rose to take his place. Our horses, trained for battle, became panicked in the tight quarters, their hooves kicking out wildly. A few were felled by the natives, who targeted them with spears and flaming arrows. Without the full advantage of our cavalry, we were at a severe disadvantage. Tuscaloosa's warriors used the terrain to their advantage, pressing us against the walls of the village. Their clubs struck with bone-crushing force, and their spears pierced through the gaps in our armor. My soldiers fought bravely, their swords flashing in the firelight as they defended one another with the ferocity of cornered wolves. Amid the chaos, the Christian flag of Spain was raised high above our defensive line, its presence a rallying point for our beleaguered forces. Though we were vastly outnumbered, the sight of the flag renewed our faith. Priests accompanying the expedition shouted prayers, their voices drowned out by the cacophony of battle. Hours passed, though it felt like days. The sun began to dip below the horizon, and finally, the tide of attackers began to wane. Their bodies lay scattered across the battlefield, mingled with those of my fallen men. The ground was slick with blood, and the acrid stench of death hung heavy in the air. Mabila was reduced to ashes, the village consumed entirely by the flames the natives themselves had set. But what victory was there in such destruction? Thousands of Tuscaloosa's warriors had died, yet my forces were decimated. We lost nearly half our men, and those who survived were wounded and exhausted. The treasures we found, pearls and other trinkets, seemed meaningless in the face of the heavy toll. Chief Tuscaloosa was nowhere to be found. Whether he perished in the inferno or fled into the wilderness, we could not say. His people had fought with a determination that could only come from the defense of their homes and families. It was a lesson in their resolve, one that would stay with me for the rest of my journey. As we gathered our wounded and counted our dead, I stood amid the ruins of Mabila and reflected on the cost of this campaign. This was not the glorious conquest we had envisioned when we left Spain. Instead, it was a grim reminder of the strength and courage of the people we sought to subdue. The village and its surrounding forests were teeming with life, a rich land of opportunity and resistance. The wooden walls of Mabila, so simple and primitive, had held against the might of Spain, a testament to the ingenuity of these people. The firelight cast long shadows across the forest, the trees standing as silent witnesses to the carnage that had unfolded. Tuscaloosa's people fought not just for survival, but for a way of life that was deeply connected to the land. The thought haunted me as we moved on, leaving the ruins of Mabila behind. The conquest of this new world would not be swift or easy, and it would come at great cost to both sides. As I write this, the fire of Mabila still burns in my memory, and the vision of La Florida, with its golden shores and endless forests, calls me onward. This is a land of promise and peril, and though the path is fraught with hardship, I am resolved to press forward. For in this land lies the future of Spain, and perhaps even the salvation of its people. My journey continues, though each step is met with hardship. I pray that God grants us the strength to endure and the wisdom to conquer. These lands are vast and filled with riches untold, yet they are also treacherous, their people unwilling to yield. Still, I am resolved to bring glory to Spain and to God, to claim this land for our crown and our faith. The fire of Mabila still burns in my memory, and the pearls of Kofitachequi still glisten in my dreams. One day, perhaps, these lands will be tamed, their people brought into the fold of Christendom. Until then, we march onward, ever in search of the riches and glory that await.